Hayden was straight up asked, Lindsey Graham, how did Russia hack them when they refused to let the FBI even use the service?
Anything that we indicted the Russians for, Obama's national security advisor is profiting from this when taxpayers paid for it.
Guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society.
Well, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't get that, man. They go through all this trouble to get here and then come here and vote Democrat.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in. Tonight, I'm going to present you with several pieces of a much larger puzzle. They're fact-based, forensically verifiable pieces of evidence, many things that I put together myself, working for these very people on these very projects. Nothing I'm going to say is classified. I'll only speak to commercially available products that we sold. These products were built from defense weapons, defense contracts, weapons contracts. And what you're gonna have to ask yourself when you're done watching this tonight is, did Obama's national security advisor allow social media psychological warfare applications to fall into the hands of the Chinese? How I will present this is, how I put this together, in fact, is through newspaper articles that show the investment in Clear Force by the UK company, and investment in that UK company by Chinese owned SoftBank. This all happened within a month of each other, one right after another. And one other event that was taking place at that exact same time is when Mark Zuckerberg was sitting before Congress.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake.
And what you'll see tonight is how all of this ties in to what you saw in the PBS episode In the Age of AI.
The public unveiling of a form of artificial intelligence called deep learning that mimics the neural networks of the human brain.
So what happens with machine learning or artificial intelligence, initially with AlphaGo, is that the machine is fed all kinds of Go games. And then it studies them, learns from them, and it figures out its own moves. And because it's an AI system, it's not just following instructions, it's figuring out its own instructions. It comes up with moves that humans hadn't thought of before. So it studies games that humans have played, it knows the rules, and then it comes up with creative moves.
와, 정말 생각지도 못한.
That's a very surprising move.
I thought it was a mistake.
Game 2, Move 37.
That move 37 was a move that humans could not fathom. but yet it ended up being brilliant and woke people up to say, wow, after thousands of years of playing, we never thought about making a move like that.
So the race in AI between China and America, it's a big deal. There's a couple components, though, to it. And you keep in mind when we were doing this, when I was doing this with the ShadowNet, for example, that was from 2007 to 2010. That was before AI, right? There's a segment in this, I believe it's this video, the PBS video, where they make a point that the Cambridge Analytica applications it had interfaced with the probably APIs that it interfaced with Facebook to collect all of the Facebook user data that it used to influence elections was used older pre-AI technology. And if I can find where that is, I'll include it like right here.
You know, I wish I could say that after Cambridge Analytica, we've learned our lesson and that everything will be much better after that, but I'm afraid the opposite is true. In some ways, Cambridge Analytica was using tools that were 10 years old. It was really, in some ways, old school first wave data science.
So, the ShadowNet didn't include the capabilities of AI. It was mostly hand work, but we still collected, it was still all about collecting data. The more data we could collect, the more we could analyze, the more analysts could do. And, you know, my area of specialty, of expertise was in taxonomies and building queries and things. So, you know, we had a very robust capability of analytics, but we didn't have AI at the time, right? So that was a big component that we would have loved to have had. And from what I understand, was a component missing from Cambridge Analytica, which kind of supports my theory that components of Cambridge Analytica, components of their social media, either collection or analytics, were incorporated from IP, ShadowNet related IP. I believe there's a high probability in that just because of what I've seen it do, what I've seen the ShadowNet do, what I've seen the Cambridge Analytica stuff do. It's virtually the same. And Cambridge Analytica is directly tied to Wikistrat and SciGroup. Wikistrat, of which Wikistrat and SciGroup, General James Jones and General Michael Hayden are both on the board of directors.
All of these tiny signals are the behavioral surplus that turns out to have immense predictive value.
In 2010, Facebook experimented with AI's predictive powers in what they called a social contagion experiment. They wanted to see if, through online messaging, they could influence real-world behavior. The aim was to get more people to the polls in the 2010 midterm elections.
Cleveland, I need you to keep on fighting. I need you to keep on believing.
They offered 61 million users an I voted button, together with faces of friends who had voted. A subset of users received just the button. In the end, they claimed to have nudged 340,000 people to vote. They would conduct other massive contagion experiments. Among them, one showing that by adjusting their feeds, they could make users happy or sad.
When they went to write up these findings, they boasted about two things. One was, oh my goodness, Now we know that we can use cues in the online environment to change real-world behavior.
Oh, now you know. Well, I hate to surprise you, but Obama's national security advisor knew about this since 2007. He was profiting from DoD contracts based around the TRWI, the Trans-Regional Web Initiative, which basically would have given you the same analytics, the same results as, you know, is what Google would have determined from that. That yeah, you can manipulate things on the internet. They were talking about Google doing this in 2010. Obama's national security advisor had this, like I said, since 2007. Expanded on it massively, including the introduction of AI in 2013, all for private profit, for private businesses, as well as defense contracts, but taking defense contract money and developing the ShadowNet, developing ClearForce, and building on these same behavioral, predictive behavioral reports that they sell commercially.
That's big news. The second thing that they understood and they celebrated was that we can do this in a way that bypasses the user's awareness.
Bypassing the user's awareness was actually one of the areas, one of the things that I was responsible for on the IIA contract in Iraq, building the capabilities, right? You can build capabilities for anything. I'm not saying we used them or didn't use them for anything, right? But that is the exact capability, non-attribution, anonymity, that we built into the ShadowNet, which we sold commercially for the purpose of influencing elections. Was discussed. What that Harvard professor was referring to was what we called the keys to the kingdom. Not just with the anonymity, but with the untying, the freeing of our hands to be able to go where we wanted to go where we use the data that we needed to use, collect the data that we needed to collect. Government attorneys were always tying our hands. And that was a good thing, right? That protected Americans. Google, China, Dynology, ClearForce do not have those same laws, rules, regulations, requirements protecting them. They essentially have the keys to the kingdom.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can't say you don't have the keys to the kingdom. With the bling bling.
That's awesome.
You get it, Jamil?
That's perfect.
You see up in the upper corner there?
Everybody's defeated.
That took a long time to get that guy masked back behind me.
Where is that? Is that in a hooch?
No. No, that was actually...
That's right in there.
No, actually, I didn't use that one because it
there's a mirror behind
turned out bad. So, no, that's in his office there. So I used that, Jamil had one on his thumb, on his pictures.
It's the keys to the kingdom.
It is the same micro-behavioral targeting that is directed toward individuals based on intimate, detailed understanding of personalities. So this is precisely what Cambridge Analytica did, simply pivoting from the advertisers to the political outcomes.
The Cambridge Analytica scandal of 2018 engulfed Facebook, forcing Mark Zuckerberg to appear before Congress to explain how the data of up to 87 million Facebook users had been harvested by a political consulting company based in the UK.
Okay, I gotta stop him here for a moment, folks. And this is where I need to remind everybody that, once again, the Psy Group, which is owned by a guy named Joel Zamel, who also owns it. Psy Group is like a sister psyop company to Joel Zamel's other company, Wikistrat. Joel Zamel, he's Israeli. I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of the guys behind screwing up Benjamin Netanyahu's previous thing. But I don't know. Be interesting to find that out. But at any rate, Joel Zamel owns that company. His offices, for his Wikistrat offices, were raided by the FBI in Israel. I believe as well the Psy Group offices were as well. This was done by Robert Mueller's special counsel team, and from what I understand, it was also directly connected to the Cambridge Analytica. From the original tapes, apparently Psy Group was involved with some of the black operations, more on the ground and such, but absolutely was involved with Cambridge Analytica. So I have to point that out, pointing over there, that, Joel Zamel, Obama's national security advisor, and Obama's head of the CIA, all are on the same board. And then I also have to point out that Obama's national security advisor and Obama's head of his CIA is also on the board and founding members of Clear Force, which is basically a Minority Report like behavioral profiling application that's uses AI to determine whether or not you're predictively likely to steal or leak. And you'll hear predictively mentioned a lot in this professor's comments, because that's what they're doing with this data. They're collecting the data and they are predictively determining outcomes so that they can use that information, that knowledge, to steer a narrative or whatever's necessary, right?
The purpose was to target and manipulate voters in the 2016 presidential campaign, as well as the Brexit referendum. Cambridge Analytica had been largely funded by conservative hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer.
And now we know that any billionaire with enough money who can buy the data, buy the machine intelligence capabilities, buy the skilled data scientists, they too can commandeer the public.
I would like to take a quick moment to point out to her that that is, however, true. In fact, recently the co-founder of LinkedIn, we know for a fact, and he came out and apologized for it, used non-attributable, anonymized social media psychological warfare, fake personas, fake media, fake news, fake everything. He used IIA to affect the outcome of the 2018 Alabama race with the guy who's now kind of an anti-Trumper. They were helping out the guy that was running against Trump. So we have that as actual evidence of malevolence, right? But when it comes to President Trump, that side group article that I've posted a couple times up here previously as a screenshot, that's from, I believe, a New York Times article. Don't quote me on that. One New York Times, Washington Post, one of them, where they stated that, in fact, that was a proposal submitted to the Trump campaign. You can see it's on the bottom of the proposal right there. It was submitted to the Trump campaign, and the Trump campaign rejected it, right? And in fact, the Mueller report concluded that the Trump campaign had actually rejected like 11 or more times advances from either Russian or any source to use unethical or malevolent means to subvert the election process. So we know that the Democrats have used it through that guy, the co-founder of LinkedIn. But we also know that President Trump has actually rejected it. Did he accept it again later on or some other? I don't know. But the evidence I do know is that he's the only one that I do know that has actually rejected it.
And infect and infiltrate and upend our democracy with the same methodologies that surveillance capitalism uses every single day.
Yeah, for this next part, if you couldn't laugh, you'd have to cry.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry.
Zuckerberg has apologized for numerous violations of privacy, and his company was recently fined $5 billion by the Federal Trade Commission.
Maybe I'm a little slow, Mr. Zuckerberg, but could you please explain to me how you can just make that statement, knowing that at the exact same time you are making this statement, your company is partnering with the guy I built the ShadowNet for, General James Jones, to restore election integrity worldwide. And when I say he was partnering with them, it wasn't meant in a tangential way. Facebook partnered with the Atlantic Council to restore election integrity worldwide, and General Jones was the chairman of the board. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that, Atlantic Council was General Jones at the time. Sorry.
He has said Facebook will now make data protection a priority, and the company has suspended tens of thousands of third-party apps from its platform as a result of an internal investigation.
So I gotta say, I'm a bit surprised with PBS, with some of this, because I actually reached out to them in late 2015 with a lot of the stuff that I mentioned here earlier tonight. Never heard back from them. Oh my goodness, the list is impossible. It's impossible to list the amount of people and different organizations that I've reached out to since 2015. But these are some bad people, and NPR is focused right now on Google and on Facebook, and clearly you need to focus on them. But I've also shown you how companies like Dynology and ClearForce, owned by Obama's former national security advisor and Obama's CIA director, are in a race for this same capability. Only I believe that where Google is in Facebook, they are more profit driven, but their issues, their practice with influencing elections already. I'll show something shortly from the NPR documentary about how they were actually altering the outcome. They did alter the outcome for the election. So we see that Google goes into these areas, but we also know that General Jones has had this capability since at least 2007, probably I'm going to assume before. So what's worse, right? We have to make these decisions, and you know, I generally steer towards the government, to be honest with you. I don't trust private businesses. I don't trust Google. I don't trust Jones. I found that when I was answering to the government, even as a contractor, there were rules in place that we had to follow that we didn't have to follow as a private citizen or doing a job for a non-government organization. Ooh, NGO, where have I heard that before? But we need to remember there are a lot of potential threats out there.
AI pioneer Yoshua Bengio also has concerns about how his algorithms are being used.
So the AIs are tools, and they will serve the people who control those tools. If those people's interests go against the values of democracy, then democracy is in danger. So I believe that scientists who contribute to science, when that science can or will have an impact on society, those scientists have a responsibility. It's a little bit like the physicists of around the Second World War who rose up to tell the governments, wait, nuclear power can be dangerous and nuclear war can be really, really destructive. And today, the equivalent of the physicists of the 40s and 50s and 60s are the computer scientists who are doing machine learning and AI.
So I worked for Dynology from 2007, October 2007 to May 2015. I was let go from my job in May. I had filed in April. I had filed a formal complaint of abuse against a GS 13 or 14 who was actually he was a chief, J83 chief at the time, and I filed a complaint against the individual because he threatened to have me terminated if I did not give him administrative access to a classified network. And he didn't have the appropriate memorandums or certifications for me to even be able to do that. And I didn't even have the power to do that. I had to bundle up his information and send it over to the KMOs. The KMOs would have given him authorization for administrative access to a classified network. At least anything above our container level. So I couldn't do it anyway, right? But he was ticked off, and there was an ongoing thing for about a year, which is a whole another story. A massive data loss, completely preventable, completely covered up and hidden. And and I was getting sick of it, right? So this guy was like screaming and yelling at me, threatening to fire me so loud that the guy next to me heard it and himself filed a complaint along with me. Well, the next day, those same people that were listed in the complaint modified the contract that I had been on for the last 5 years in South Korea, removing only the requirements for my position, right? And then about 3 days after I was forced to leave, they turned around and modified the contract back. This is a $12 million contract, back to its original requirements, and I had been effectively replaced. All beginning the day after I filed a formal complaint of fraud, waste, and abuse. So I thought that I would be protected through whistleblower protection. I filed an IG complaint, which you can see here, back in 2015. It wasn't denied because of the merits of my claim. The IG complaint was denied because as a subcontractor, I wasn't protected under the whistleblower protection laws. It's all garbage. Subcontractors were actually listed as being protected under whistleblower protection laws on the DOJ's website at the time. It didn't have an asterisk next to it, and I believed that by doing the right thing, my government was going to stand behind me, protect me, do the right thing themselves, protect our taxpayer money, protect our national security. But none of that happened. And what I'll show you next is an email, and I'm going full screen on this email. So let me give you some context for the email here. This is from David. He's the manager back in Virginia with the headquarters in Dynology. from like probably 2007 to 2013 or so, I answered directly to Jim Jones, the president of Dynology, and the son of General James Jones. Jim Jones, General Jones's son, is the Jim who will be referenced in this email. So it says, it would be nice if everyone acted on principle as you do, but that is typically not how the world works, and you will not find peace if you expect others to operate from a sense of what's right rather than from a sense of what is best for them. I am discussing this with Jim, and we will do what is in Dynology's long-term interest, operating in a way that will grow our work share over time. I will be in touch. And then it goes on to say, your perspective and your help are appreciated, as is your willingness to take a longer view in building relationship.
When that science can or will have an impact on society, those scientists have a responsibility. It's a little bit like the physicists of around the Second World War who rose up to tell the governments, wait, nuclear power can be dangerous and nuclear war can be really, really destructive. And today, the equivalent of the physicists of the 40s and 50s and 60s are the computer scientists who are doing machine learning and AI.
So you read the email that I just read. You hear what these scientists and developers and creators and billionaires of companies say that they're doing with it and what they plan on doing with it. We'll go into that even more shortly. But I thought it was important when I heard that person say how in the wrong hands, this is a very powerful tool. And when you read an email like what I just showed you, which is signed off on by the son of Obama's national security advisor, you ask yourself, will the decisions that they make with the data with the data that they're collecting on you and everybody in this like race against Google, and as I showed at the beginning of this video, how there are direct financial connections to foreign countries, China, UK, ClearForce. ClearForce was built from ShadowNet technology, so you're looking at it going right to them. And so when I'm sitting here trying to evaluate whether or not, take the pieces of the puzzle that I have and say whether or not a retired 4-star general, Obama's national security advisor, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, when I'm sitting here evaluating whether someone like that would have the moral character to do what's in the best interest of our country or his company, I am left with the conclusion exactly as it outlines in that email, that you put company before anything else. And I'm wrong for acting on a sense of principle or what's right. These are the people that are as powerful, if not more powerful right now than Google, Facebook. These are the people that Facebook just partnered with to restore election integrity worldwide. Same people in that IG complaint that I filed in 2015, same people in that email. Let's see what else this technology is capable of.
The problem is that AI has already spread so far into our lives and work.
Well, it's in healthcare, it's in education, it's in criminal justice, it's in the experience of shopping as you walk down the street. It has pervaded so many elements of everyday life, and in a way that in many cases is completely opaque to people. While we can see a phone and look at it and we know that there's some AI technology behind it, many of us don't know that when we go for a job interview and we sit down and we have a conversation that we're being filmed and that our micro expressions are being analysed by hiring companies, or that if you're in the criminal justice system, that there are risk assessment algorithms that are deciding your risk number, which could determine whether or not you receive bail or not.
So does anything she's describing there sound vaguely familiar to what I've been warning everybody about for the last couple years now? You know, I have a real problem with Google doing this. I have a real problem with Facebook doing this. I definitely have a problem with the former Obama's national security advisor and the former director of Obama's CIA having this power. Okay? So, yeah. that's a problem with me.
And this is the test lab for the surveillance state. Here in the far northwest of China is the autonomous region of Xinjiang. Of the 25 million people who live here, almost half are a Muslim, Turkic-speaking people called the Uyghurs. In 2009, tensions with local Han Chinese led to protests and then riots in the capital, Urumqi. As the conflict has grown, the authorities have brought in more police and deployed extensive surveillance technology. That data feeds an AI system that the government claims can predict individuals prone to terrorism.
You know, these new technologies, AI, quantum technology, the computer revolution as a whole, has changed everything, but these new technologies will change things on a fundamental level that we do not even remotely understand. And I have to ask myself if these technologies change class of people, where you have this incredible wealth from these technologies, but these technologies like robotics and AI eliminate the jobs below it, and you have an uprising of people. Well, how are you going to control those people? Well, this is one way you're going to do it. The very technology that fueled the next revolution will be the same technology that controls it. It'll control it through lies. It'll control it through police states, security, social credit scores. All of these things are what Clear Force is trying to perfect and trying to be a player in the market. They have assets all over the world, and pretty much everywhere there's an AI technology opening up, 5G markets becoming available, you will find Jones and you will find China. Now, you'll find Jones advocating for its sale in the United States. He's spoken before Congress. He's one of the largest advocates for it. Why is he advocating for 5G? Because everything you see in this with the AI requires as much possible, every single scrap of data as you can get. And then it analyzes that data to create profiles on people, to predictively determine how people are going to react or act. And so if you can see an uprising taking place because of the displaced workers displaced by AI, then you can control it. I think that's kind of an interesting perspective. You know, these new technologies, AI, quantum technology, the computer revolution as a whole, has changed everything, but these new technologies will change things on a fundamental level that we do not even remotely understand. And I have to ask myself if these technologies change class of people, where you have this incredible wealth from these technologies, but these technologies like robotics and AI eliminate the jobs below it, and you have an uprising of people. Well, how are you going to control those people? Well, this is one way you're going to do it. The very technology that fueled the next revolution will be the same technology that controls it. It'll control it through lies. It'll control it through police states, security, social credit scores. All of these things are what Clear Force is trying to perfect and trying to be a player in the market. They have assets all over the world, and pretty much everywhere there's an AI technology opening up, 5G markets becoming available, you will find Jones and you will find China. Now, you'll find Jones advocating for its sale in the United States. He's spoken before Congress. He's one of the largest advocates for it. Why is he advocating for 5G? Because everything you see in this with the AI requires as much possible, every single scrap of data as you can get. And then it analyzes that data to create profiles on people, to predictively determine how people are going to react or act. And so if you can see an uprising taking place because of the displaced workers displaced by AI, then you can control it. I think that's kind of an interesting perspective.
I want to ask you about security. We've been talking a lot about cybersecurity, AI as well, and obviously 5G continues to come up. How important is it that the United States is at the forefront of anything that happens in the 5G space going forward?
The 5G issue is the most disruptive technology that's going to come our way, probably in this century. 4G, 3G evolutionary, 5G transformative. And not just about military. I'm talking about all aspects of our society, from banking to the medicine field, to the smart cities that we have ambitions for. You can't have a smart city if you don't have a secure network. The competition is China. And whoever wins this competition is going to be a very dominant player on the globe. And China has a very seductive, appealing message. We're cheap. We're reliable. We don't put strings on our technology. What they don't say is we don't share our technology. We don't train you on our technology. We don't give you the keys. We don't give you the encryption. And we won't partner with your domestic countries. The U.S. Technology that we're developing will do just the opposite of that. It'll make us more secure. It'll enable our individual citizens to have a private, secure cell phone. It'll enable our corporations to have protection of their intellectual properties. and it'll enable our governments to be more secure. And in an organization like NATO, you cannot have a Chinese system and a U.S. system interface. So the choices for our friends and allies are clear. You can either go for the cheap, seductive, but extremely vulnerable system that will take all of your privacy, your intellectual properties, and your secrets back to Beijing, or you can invest a little bit more money and have a more secure society.
Okay, unwrapping some of that. Yeah, China bad, but is, NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Obama's National Security Advisor, is Obama's CIA Director, are having them own private companies running this outside of the tradition, the traditional laws and regulations that you would run into with our government. Is that somehow better? I'm not convinced that is. And these additional government funds that are going to these programs are going to end up just going right back into his pocket. And then he's going to turn around and build them out commercially through his company. And then China's going to come in and invest in his company. And they're going to get the intellectual property rights of something our Defense Department developed or our government paid for, who he sold to NATO and our allies as being more secure.
Where do you think we are in that race?
I think in the marketing of it, we are behind. One of the reasons the Chinese system is cheap is because it's subsidized. Our government is now waking up, I think, and we're seeing more pronouncements from our leaders, which is very good. The private sector is doing quite well. I think our technological advance is very impressive. I think we're working on systems that are impenetrable, in other words, that can't be hacked.
Supremacy is called the Sycamore processor.
And it's parallel processing 2 to the 53 states, which is 10 million billion. And thus that enormous amount of parallel processing is what gives it the power.
When we run small chunks of the computation in the largest supercomputer in the world, our estimate is that it will take thousands of years to complete the full computation.
So if you can do in 3 minutes and 20 seconds what would take our current traditional computers 10,000 years to calculate or decipher, kind of suggests that any encryption with any device is going to be vulnerable to quantum technology. You combine the the predictive capabilities of quantum computers with the predictive capabilities of AI, there is not a single computer on this planet that could secure itself from that. And if you say, well, how about we just secure it with another quantum computer? Well, you know what? Is it okay? So it's going to take 6 minutes and 40 seconds to hack that quantum computer's quantum algorithm. It's just going to be so I think it's a bit disingenuous to make such a bold statement. Just throwing that one out there, Big Jim.
And can't be reverse engineered. And those are the two things that will assure our technical dominance in the future.
So the archetype of the ShadowNet is basically in competition to with 5G technology, social media, data collection, everything that they laid out in the NPR documentary. I just find that amazing. And I think people should have a real problem with that. Like I said, I only have for you pieces of a much bigger puzzle. We need to find out the answers to these. I can't do it. We need to find out how pervasive the use of these weapons are within our own government. How many lawmakers are in office right now because they used the ShadowNet or a similar technology? Remember, I'm here to testify that I have had a personal conversation with Jim Jones, the son of Obama's national security advisor. At the same time, we are handling the primary, the IT component of the primary for John McCain's presidential campaign. I'm having conversations with Jim Jones about the potential use of the ShadowNet, which we were making up flyers and making commercially available right then. What the potential benefits and how it could be sold to campaigns. And this is at the same time that Dynology is providing the IT services for John McCain's campaign site. General Jones and John McCain go back 4 decades. Paul Manafort, his company 3EDC, lists on their website that during this exact same period of time, 2007 to 2010, Dynology was 3EDC's #1 preferred partner. A lot of coincidences going on here. 3EDC was making hundreds of thousands of dollars from the campaign. They basically took over the IT component of it as the prime after the primary. It was, Jim made a really smart comment to me right after that about how the Chinese never hacked McCain's campaign when Dynology was running it. And I would have had no reason to have thought anything of that at the time, till I found out later that, in fact, we all found out later that China had hacked both Obama's and McCain's campaign sites right after we had handed it over. You know, a lot of funny, a lot of suspicious connections. Wherever Jones is, China's not far. Jones is usually complaining about it, but it's usually working out to his advantage. I don't know what's up with that. So I'm going to close this out. This has actually taken me 2 days to put together. I've had to wear the same shirt for 2 days because I didn't want to look ridiculous. And it's put a lot of work in this. The file became corrupted. I can only hope the file does not come corrupted when I try to render this. That really sucked. I hope this helps start a conversation. I have taken this to everybody. Matt Gaetz, Lindsey Graham, Adam Schiff, Dianne Feinstein, Devin Nunes. Last week I literally drove to DC and walked into the Senate Judiciary Committee, handed them this document here, copy of it. So this is the memorandum for United States Senate Committee on the Judiciary. The Honorable Lindsey Graham and the Honorable Dianne Feinstein. I asked them why they never responded to this. This was from July of 2019. I asked, I've literally spoken to Lindsey Graham, handed him a copy of my first book, told him my work that I did with Obama and the ShadowNet with his national security advisor. This is a month before the midterm elections in 2018. I've spoken to Matt Gaetz, went to his inaugural ball in Tallahassee, handed him spoke to him then, arranged to meet with him later, could never meet with him, so sent the envelope full of information similar to what was there, and had that hand delivered by George Colella, one of the founder of Bikers for 45. And so Matt Gaetz has it. All of these people have had their hands on it, but they're not doing anything. Judge Janine Pirro, she's known about it since December of last year. I called her and spoke to her personally on the phone. It was a short conversation, but she responded to my text message a few days later. I engaged with Sarah Carter on January 13th of 2019, a couple weeks after I had managed to contact Judge Janine. Worked with Sarah Carter for till middle of February. They were just getting ready to roll out the story on Fox, and Judge Janine sent me a text stating that she was going to contact Devin Nunes, NRE, my issue. And at the same time, I received a text from Sarah Carter that she was getting ready to roll out my story. And on Fox over the next week, over several days, because you couldn't really tell it in one day. She had also stated in her text that she had just spoken to Judge Janine. And then I never heard from either of them again. Not a phone call back, not a, hey, this came up or that came up or we can't do it because of this. Just never heard from them again. So in other words, like the day after, the last time I ever heard from them was when they were going to reach out to the head of the Senate committee that I had submitted this formal complaint to. A complaint that very well could involve the use of the ShadowNet to help political candidates, achieve an unethical advantage over their opponent. So, and then I never hear from them again. So, I'm pretty much at a loss. I've put this video together. I'm doing more. I've got ShadowNet.tv that I'm launching shortly. I've got a lot of support that I've gained recently through Patreon, through some journalists through Patreon, through supporters from Patreon. But please share this. Please have this upset you, tick you off. Reach out to your congressman, reach out to your senator, and say, why isn't anything being looked into with regards to Obama's national security advisor and his CIA director? All of these people, the ShadowNet is literally tied to 8 different people in 2 different companies that were either indicted or under suspicion of election influence, social media election influence, by Robert Mueller. 8 people, at least 8 people in 2 companies. And that was put together by me. I've got no resources. I kind of know where to look, but I don't have resources. Imagine what you could do if you were a journalist that actually decided to do what you swore an oath to do. Do what the Constitution carved out protections just specifically for you to be able to do. That would be nice, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Thank you very much for watching this, for liking and sharing if you so did. I can use any support I can get. Please visit my Patreon site. I would like to be able to continue to do these. It is a challenge. This took a couple days. Things failed that I didn't anticipate failing. So there's a lot involved with this. There's a lot of time spent in going back and forth. It's 4:30 a.m. in the morning right now that I'm finishing this up. On Sunday, I have a VA appointment, believe it or not, Sunday afternoon at 1. I don't know how I'm going to make that. But I will put in the work. I will put in the effort. But I do need your help, right? If you think that this is important enough and you believe in your country and you see what's happening, help me out. Share this, like it, go to my Patreon site, help me get ShadowNet.tv going. It won't collect your data, I can tell you that much. It's probably going to collect data, it's going to have to, it's a website, but it's not going to sell the data, right? It's not going to be used for anything untoward, and it's not going to be sold. If you come to ShadowNet TV to do something on ShadowNet TV, that's where your experience begins and ends with a company, my company, any company it should be, but it's not. And that's a big thing that we gotta help try to fix. Thank you again very much for tuning in. I look forward to doing some more of these in the future. Hopefully I will get better. Again, thank you.